Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is quite an intriguing opinion piece published in today's Daily Express. And it covers, the headline is, if you oppose the SNP's grotesque hate crime act, then stand up and be counted at the general election. This is a topic that I can wholeheartedly agree with. And although there are a couple of small points in the opinion piece that I don't agree with, and I'll cover them at the end, I wholeheartedly agree with the majority of the writings by Ross Thompson, who's a former Tory MP and MSP, who wrote the said opinion piece. So I'll do something that I don't normally do, and that is actually read an article verbatim and in its entirety. I normally just pick things from newspapers when they influence a video that I do. But this one, I think even the parts that I don't agree with, I'll read in their entirety and give my opinion of the opinion once we finish. So, as I said, the headlines there, if you oppose the SNP's grotesque hate crime act, then stand up and be counted at the general election. The SNP Hate Crime Act fosters an environment of fear and censorship and is a law more worthy of Gilead, the dystopian nightmare nation depicted in The Handmaid's Tale, than Scotland. Then a nice photograph of one of the women in Gilead with a muzzle on because of her opinions. Ronald Reagan warned that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction, a reminder that words spoken in warning can swiftly become the reality that we face. The Hate Crime Act possesses the greatest threat to the ability of Scots to express ourselves freely. The Act steps into every aspect of our lives, including the private conversations we have with our friends in a coffee shop, the discussions we have with our partner in a restaurant, the exchanges that we have in our private WhatsApp chats or debates we have around the kitchen table at home. Nowhere protects us from being targeted under this draconian law. The Act's Stasi-like overreach represents an unprecedented intrusion into our private lives, trampling on our private liberties, criminalising our conversations and eroding the democratic freedom of speech. It is alarming that in nanny state Scotland, where second-rate politicians believe that the government knows best, that all the political parties, save for the Scottish Tories, threw their weight behind this regressive piece of legislation. Scottish Labour, Scottish Greens and the Scottish Liberal Democrats are all just as culpable as the SNP in this full frontal assault on our freedom of expression. One of the most concerning aspects of this act is its potential to be weaponised by fringe activists who are seeking to silence their opponents or to maliciously exert revenge from having been offended by an alternative point of view. This concern has been crystallised after just 1 week of the new act, with Police Scotland receiving more than 7,000 complaints. By providing a vague definition and a low threshold that a hate crime occurs when someone behaves or communicates towards a protected group in an abusive or insulting manner, the law now grants unique power to activist individuals and groups with an agenda of suppressing views that they don't like. We have already seen transgender activists seeking to have J.K. Rowling arrested for her gender-critical remarks. Stating a fact like a woman cannot have a penis can now land you in prison. This will have a chilling effect on open debate and dialogue, undermining Scottish democracy and fostering an environment of fear and censorship. It is a grotesque law worthy of Gilead, not Scotland. The hate crime is just the latest in a whole series of policies over the last 2 decades of nationalist rule, which have created an era of big government control. We have seen the SNP centralise power in Edinburgh, stripping local authorities of their autonomy, seize the pay packets of hard-working Scots with higher taxes, and hand a significant portion of it over to people who haven't earned it, and prioritise conformity over diversity of thought and education. We have frighteningly become accustomed to an overbearing Scottish Government determined to chip away at our liberties. However, It is imperative that the Scottish public recognise that change is possible, but we need to shake ourselves out of our collective apathy. Power ultimately rests with the consent of the governed. Scotland, known as the birthplace of the Enlightenment, has a rich history of intellectual freedom and debate. It is the home of great thinkers such as Adam Smith and David Hume. It is our duty to honour their legacy and resist being dragged back into a dark age for forces seeking to undermine it. The SNP leadership cares not about the consent of the governed. That is clear. This abhorrent act was rammed through Parliament without amendment, but we must remember that the power of any government ultimately rests with the consent of the governed. A general election is fast approaching. It is our opportunity to assert our sovereignty as citizens of a democratic society and remind those in power that they are accountable to us. The very political parties who have imposed the Hate Crime Act on us will be seeking your vote. Elections are a few but very real occasions where voters can take back control and hold their elected representatives to account. Do not miss this opportunity. Challenge the candidates knocking on your door asking for your vote to answer two simple questions. 1. Did you support the Hate Crime Act? 2. Will you repeal the Hate Crime Act? Although this will be a UK-wide election and the ability to revoke the legislation lies at Holyrood, it is an opportunity to send the political parties a message they cannot ignore. Do not let this election pass you by. Get involved. Volunteer with a local party. Stuff envelopes. Deliver leaflets. Make calls and knock doors. Talk to your neighbours, friends and family. Have conversations, not arguments. Get to know the local candidates in your area. Attend candidate hustings. Voice your opinion and hold the candidates to account. Why not even run for office yourself? The battle against the Hate Crime Act cannot be left to others. It is not simply a political battle, but a moral imperative. It is a fight for the soul of Scotland and for the fundamental principles and freedoms that define us. In Scotland, freedom and liberty are fighting for their lives. It is up to you and me to do what our elected representatives have failed to do. Take a stand in defence of freedom and send a clear message that we will not be silenced. Not bad. Now, there are but a few pieces in that article that I don't entirely agree with, and that's about the election. I will never hide my aims and wishes for the next two elections, first one being Westminster anytime now, and the second one being the Scottish election, which will happen sometime in the next 2 years. I don't care who wins, as long as it's no SNP. I don't think people should stand for election, particularly in Westminster, where it's first past the post, as independents and stand in a ticket trying to defeat the SNP, because that will be almost impossible, sadly, as that may seem to me. But the three normal parties, Labour, Conservative and Liberal Democrat, can each retain seats and take seats where they were second placed before. And that is called tactical voting, when you vote for the person most likely to de-seat and dethrone the party you dislike. I have no qualms in telling everybody, non-surprisingly, that I really dislike the SNP. So what I'll be doing is I will be tactically voting. My fear is, although I believe that in the future political bodies such as Houses of Parliament and the Scottish Parliament should, in the future, have a place for the smaller and newer parties. I do not believe that the next two elections for the Scottish electorate is a place for new and upcoming parties, because it could derail any attempts to tactically vote. And I truly believe, because of the accounts of the SNP and the massive opportunity the Scottish electorate have to actually bury the SNP financially by reducing their incomes from their MPs they send to Westminster, from their short money they get from Westminster, and in 2 years' time from the donations they receive from their MSPs. Without this money, I believe they are financially bankrupt. Now, it is easy for me to vote for anybody because I have in the past voted Tory, I've voted Labour, and I've even voted Liberal Democrat. I believe they're even a different name at that point in their evolution. So I understand it's easy for me to tactically vote, and I understand that for some it is a hard thing to do, and I cannot tell anybody, I have not that right to tell anybody where they should vote. But for those who may have to vote Labour when they're normally Tory, or those who may have to vote Tory who are normally Labour, I would understand it would be a severe bit of soul searching. And for those people who have to do that soul searching, I would just ask them, vote for the worst, the lesser of two evils. If you really hate the Labour Party and have to vote for them, you could do so in the knowledge that you are at least defeating SNP, and vice versa. If you live in an area where it would make more sense to vote Tory to defeat the SNP, for a hard left socialist, that might be difficult, but you just have to consider voting for your chosen party in your chosen constituency. If it will have zero effect on removing the SNP, then is it worthwhile voting at all? It is worth voting, and depending on how you list your objectives at the next Westminster and the next Scottish Parliament elections, will make the decision for you. But I'll repeat, I will never tell a fellow Scot how to vote. I'll just show them the sense in doing, if they choose, what I will be doing by tactically voting. So there we go. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing, join in the comments below. But the most important thing of all, unless you're Humza, the SNP, or part of the ridiculous cult, have a great day. Cheery bye now.